Hi guys, Samantha from My Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you a liquid clay pour technique. So here is one that I experimented with a few days ago, and this is the result. Now you could make coasters out of this, you could make fridge magnets, you could make a pendant, completely up to you, but today we're going to be making a pendant, and I'm going to show you how to create this pour. Now you're going to need Kato liquid clay for this technique, and I just want to tell you why we're going to be using Kato liquid clay specifically and not Sculpey liquid clay, because I'm sure a lot of you have the Sculpey liquid clay. Unfortunately the Sculpey liquid clay is just a little bit too thick for my liking. The Kato is very fluid, flows really nicely, creates all of these nice bubbles in here, hopefully you can see. This is a Sculpey liquid clay pour, and it looks quite nice, but it's got divots in it. I don't know if you can pick that up on the camera. It did not flatten out perfectly, and you can see that we did not get any of the bubbles and things. So if you like this effect, please do go with it. It is completely doable using the exact same technique as this one, but if you're looking for this effect, you've got to do it with the Kato liquid clay. So you're going to need a little tile that you can put straight into the oven, and here's one. Doesn't need to be perfectly clean, and just pop that off to the side. We will use that. And then the liquid clay that we're using is going to be black Kato liquid clay, translucent Kato liquid clay, white liquid clay, purple, blue, and green. And you can use any colours you want, but I would recommend using the black, translucent, and white across all of them. So to start, I'm going to grab a bit of the white, and I'm just going to pour a bit into the middle here, and then I will use my finger to spread that out. It's just a lot easier if you use your finger. You can use a brush, but it gumps up the brush and you're going to need to use a lot of brushes for each colour, and it's quite difficult to clean. Then I'll take the black and I will pour that around the perimeter of this. Now while we're doing this, you might be wondering why I don't just do the liquid clay pour straight onto my pendant or bead or coaster shape instead of doing this whole liquid clay pour on a tile. Now the reason for that mainly is that the pour gets constricted, and it just doesn't come out looking as nicely. I have tried doing it on a pre-existing shape before, but it just doesn't have enough room to spread and just in general start looking interesting. It just ends up looking quite muddy. And as soon as I have done the pour and got that in the oven, I will show you what I mean. So just take the black, spread that out. You don't want it to be too thin, but you don't want it to be too thick either. And you can dab it around these edges, get it mixing with that white. But in general, you just want a coat of liquid clay across the entire surface, and this will help our liquid clay pour that we're going to do in just a moment spread out. Now you might be wondering why I put black and then white in the middle. If you look here closely, hopefully you can see that there is a little white circle over here, and then as we go out you can start seeing black showing around the outside, and I will talk more about that as we begin our pour. So just put that to the side, and I'm just going to be using a cup that I used to use for resin. You can see these little resin droplets, doesn't matter too much. You're going to need translucent, purple, the green, blue, and the white for the pour. Do not put black in, it will make it muddy. Okay. So you're just going to tip it to the side like this, because we're not going to be using a terribly huge amount of liquid clay. We're just going to be using enough to coat our tile. So I'm going to actually begin with the white. I always begin with the white. We're just going to make a small amount in there, like so. And the reason I tip it to the side is because then when we tip it like this, it's not going to have to spread from the bottom over here and spread all the way over, which mixes the colours together. So tipping it on its side like this means you use less colours and they mix together less, which is always great. Okay, then I'm going to take a little bit of the blue and I'm going to squirt that in. Okay. Then I'm going to take a bit of translucent. Now translucent, you might be wondering, why don't I just use white? You can just use white. The translucent is not absolutely necessary, especially if you don't have it. But it's quite interesting and it gives a lot of depth to the piece once it is baked. So I do like adding the translucent. Okay, then I add the green. Then I want to add another layer of white. And essentially you just will add another layer of white like so. Then a layer of purple. Then another layer of white, then blue, translucent, green, white, purple again, and then another layer of white, and then after that we will pour. Okay, and then I'm actually going to add just a touch more translucent over the top just to give some interest later when we pour. Okay, so you can see we really have ended up with a very small amount of liquid clay there. Now we're just going to bring over our tile, which is settled, and you're just going to take the cup, do a little bend in it, and you're going to pour this out slowly. Just remove this. Okay, and then you're going to start in the middle, and then you're going to start pouring around like so. And don't tip too fast. And this is why I poured the liquid clay under, because if you don't get the rings right next to each other like so, it means that you'll be able to see the underneath colour, which adds a lot of interest, and it also means that this spreads a lot easier. Whereas if you were just putting it directly on a tile, you'd end up having to use a skewer to get it to pour together and stretch, and it would end up messing up the pattern a considerable amount. Okay, and we're almost done. And you can see how far the amount of liquid clay goes. Okay, and we're coming nearly to the end of our rope. I'll probably stop about there. You can see we used up pretty much all of that, used up very little of the colour, and overall you end up using very little liquid clay. So now you might end up with a few bubbles in there, which are great, because then if you pop them, they end up with a little interesting effect over there, but in general you're not going to end up with a lot of bubbles. So this looks interesting enough as it is, but how do you create these little bubbly effects in here? I will show you how to do that. You're going to need some sort of alcohol. The stronger the effect, the stronger the amount of alcohol in it. So this one is 99.8% pure. The stronger it is like this, the better the effect, but again you can use a lower concentration so long as it's over 50% alcohol. Now I've got it in a spray bottle, and I'm just going to spray it from distance. I'd say maybe about half a ruler's length away. And you can see it instantly changes. And what it does, it's exposing some of the liquid clay that are underneath the layers on the piece. And this actually works with acrylic paint pouring as well, and this is actually where I got the idea from. And you can see it looks very interesting. Now the trick is to know when to stop, because sometimes you can actually muddy your colours. So I might give it one more spray, see if it even makes much of a difference from that end. And one more from that end, and now I'm going to stop. And now each pour is going to look very different from the next, so you're not going to be able to create exact replicas. This was using the exact same colours, exact same sequence, and you can see that we ended up with purple in the middle instead of the green. We ended up with different rings, different colours, and different bubble effects. That's the dog wanting to come in. So keep in mind it's going to look different each time. Now I'm going to put this into the oven for a full hour at Kato's recommended temperature actually, and then when it's done we will be able to proceed with our project. And if you want, you can make many more of these. Okay, so here it is out of the oven, and you should be able to just use a blade to gently nick up the sides like so, and then you can grab that with your finger and you should be able to pull it off like so. If you can't, it's not baked properly. If you try lifting it up and it starts breaking and becoming brittle, you need to bake it longer at a higher temperature. I just thought I'd show you what it looks like on the back as well. There you can see it looks really quite pretty, and you can see that the colours change quite a bit after baking. All of the coloured parts except for the white are actually translucent, so it will definitely change up quite a bit and look more interesting. So if you look here, these are the colours before they baked in there versus this. Looks very different. So now we're ready to work with this. So first step is going to be to decide what shape we want this to be, and what do we want it to be. Do we want it to be a pendant, a coaster, a magnet? Completely up to you. So let's decide. Okay, so now you have two options. You can either take a shape that's going to sit somewhat centered so that you take the entire thing, or you can off-center it so you just take off a half and half. So if we're doing earrings, which is what I've decided we're going to be doing, then you're going to want to off-center it something like this, and this will give you a very interesting effect. Now this is just a reference point for me. I don't actually want it to be exactly this shape. Well, actually, I do want it to be exactly this shape. Never mind. So there you can see what it's going to look like in the center. Now before we start, I want to just address the fact that you are going to get some wasted liquid clay. If you are watching this on Patreon and have access, well, if you're watching this on Patreon, you should have access to the Fractured Waters pendant, where I have a Pebeo paint mosaic. Swap the Pebeo paint for the liquid clay, use the exact same technique, and you will be able to turn the liquid clay into a mosaic very easily. Okay, so now what I'm going to do first is I need to grab a pen of some kind, and I don't want these to be so close together that I can't draw. Okay. So I'm just using this pen. Take whatever shape you want. I'm just gonna draw around the cutter like so, so that I create a spot for me to cut out my pendant, and then I'll leave that one there and I'll draw the other one too. There we are. Okay, then grab a pair of scissors, and this might stick to your ceramic tile. There. Okay, and now I don't want to ruin the pattern down this way, so I'm just going to gently curve in and cut this in two, which will make it easier to work with. And now this pen, I just used a Sharpie. It should be pretty easy to clean up with some alcohol. And now all you're going to do is you want to cut inside that line as close as possible, and just cut out your shape. Another thing you could do with the liquid clay leftovers is you could also chop them up into teeny little bits and put them into resin and put that into a mold to set. That's another thing you could try out. Okay, and I'll just continue doing this until I've cut out this shape and also cut out the other one. Okay, and this is what you should be left with. So just pop these off to the side, and I want to just show you how to clean up this marker. Just grab some isopropyl alcohol, give it a spray. The stronger the concentration, the easier this will be. And you should be able to move it. And it might leave a little bit of a stain, but it shouldn't leave too much. So if you're using a marker, make sure that it matches the colours that you're using. Because you can see there it does leave a little bit of a mark, but very little. Okay, there we go, and you can put that in the scrap pile, and you can use that some other time. I also like to give these a little spray as well. Quick wipe down, and that should get rid of that marker. Alright, there we go. Pop that to the side. And now you need to bring over a piece of black clay that's been rolled out to about 1 millimeter thick. Okay, can just dry these off quickly. You don't want any water on them. And I'll just demonstrate with the first one here. What you're going to do is you're going to just pop that down onto the surface. You're going to grab a piece of paper, preferably a clean piece. Just take that down to the surface and begin burnishing thoroughly from one end to the other. And I've also got the piece of black on a piece of paper that I'm happy to bake it on, because right now we will actually be rubbing the clay into its backing. You can also use a roller at this point just to embed it into that clay. You want to get to the point where you can't feel the liquid clay line anymore. If you can still feel it, you need to continue rolling. And everything I'm doing with this one, repeat with the other. Set that up and see, and you can see it's pretty well embedded. Now you just want to take your finger and gently smooth along these sides just to smooth up that seam. Like so. Okay, now it's properly embedded. Now you have an option. You can either do a take your cutters and try to position it in such a way that you can then cut out a border, but in general it is a little bit on the tricky side doing that. So what I prefer to do is I like to give it a little bit of an organic border. So I'll show you how to do that now. So before I do anything, I like to just take the ball tool and just run it around the edge very lightly. And I won't follow this exactly, but it'll give me an idea of what it's going to look like. So I want to follow it so that it's got roughly the same diameter, the border, the whole way around, but it's got ripples. And by doing this with the ball tool, I can see what it's going to look like, whether I like it or not, before I actually cut it out. And I quite like that. It matches with the interesting organic effect that we have going here. So, take your blade now, insert it, and I don't want to follow it exactly. And this is why having it on a piece of paper is really nice, because you can move it around as you're going. There we go. Then, now that I've got the initial cut, I'll just gently take this and give it a very light burnish, just to smooth out that. Because I will have some lines along here, so I'm just smoothing. It won't destroy the original cut that we made, but we are going to just smooth out so that it looks nicer. Like that, there's a spot there that I'm not happy with. Okay, so I should be able to lift that, and it shouldn't stick, it should come unstuck. If it does stick, we can always just cut it again. And I do need to cut it again. And the clay stuck to the paper, that's not a huge issue. Okay. Just going to give that a burnish again. Yeah. Okay, and we're just going to make a cut again along these edges where the clay stuck. Everything I'm doing with this one, repeat with the other one. Now I'll just see if I can use my blade to gently pick that off and get it out of the way. There we go. And now we're going to be putting resin over the top of this later on. That is completely optional. If you do not feel like you want to put resin on, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you finish it off nicely right now, because the resin will hide any flaws. But if you don't have resin, you will need to just tidy it a little bit more than you would need to if you're putting resin on. Just because you don't want any flaws showing. Okay, I'm pretty happy with it. That will go into the oven for a full 40 minutes at pretty much recommended temperature, as soon as I have finished doing the other one. Okay, and here these are out of the oven. I've taken them off the paper. You can see they've got a nice matte back. The sides are pretty good, nothing wrong with them. So now we're just going to apply resin to the front. Bring over a resin mat. Pop these on, and I'm going to be using Lisa Pavelka's Magic Gloss today, which is a UV resin. You can use ice resin, which is a 2-part resin. It's cheaper, doesn't create as big a dome, but it's cheaper, so you can try that. But it's not a UV resin, so you have to wait about 24 hours for it. There's lots of different ones that you use, but I like using Lisa Pavelka's one because it's pretty quick, easy to use, and it gives a beautiful glossy dome. Just going to pour a fair amount on there. Now I'll bring over a skewer, and I can see that I have a few air bubbles, so my first thing to do is just going to be to quickly scrape up those air bubbles while I am dragging it out to the edges. Like so. And now this does have a reputation for pulling away from the edges. The reason it does that is because you didn't apply enough resin. It likes to dome, and it likes to have a nice high dome. So if you don't put enough resin on, it's not going to stay on the edges, it's going to pull up into the size dome it wants to be. Which is a really nice thing about it, because it's one of the resins that gives me the highest dome, which is great, because I really like it. It gives a beautiful gloss-like effect. But if you are having issues with it pulling away from the edges, it is because you have not put enough resin on. Start off with a small amount. See how it goes. If you need more, just apply them. And now what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just busy taking these air bubbles that are over here, and I'm just busy scraping them off. And I would repeat with the other one, and then I'm going to put them in the UV light for about half an hour to set. Okay, and here is how they look. So you can see how beautiful and glossy those are. So they're all finished and ready to go. So I'll just put one to the side, and we're going to drill wherever you want to drill to attach your earwire. I want it to drill right at the top here. So I'll just gently press that in and then drill. It should come straight through the other side. And then I'll drill in and out a few times just to clean up that hole. Like so. There you go. Now I'll repeat with the other one. Okay. And there we go. Now I'm going to take 2 jump rings, and I'll just open them up, and these should be able to fit through. Just gently going to work that in the hole. There we go. I'm just being careful not to press the resin too much because I don't want to nick it by accident. Okay. Then I'll just close that. Like so. And then spin round that opening if you can, so that it sits inside the hole so that you don't have to see that on the original piece. There we go. And we'll repeat with the other one, the same method. And I'm just going to bring over 2 little jump rings. And I'll just open that up. Yeah, they're so tiny there, a little bit fiddly. Okay. Link our ear wire onto that, and then close. There we go, and I'll repeat with the other one. Okay, and there we go. There are our 2 beautiful earring pieces. Now as a last step, I like to just give it a quick clean with a wet wipe, just to remove any fingerprints that I might have created by touching the surface while I was busy attaching the ear wires. So just give it a gentle wipe down, just to remove any oils from your fingers, like so. There we go. And that's about it. It's really easy. Keep in mind this technique can be used to create pendants, coasters, fridge magnets, just about anything you want, so play around with it. And again, as far as Sculpey liquid clay goes, it doesn't create the same effect, but it's definitely not a wrong way to go, it's just different. So if you only have Sculpey liquid clay and you like this effect, by all means go with it, it will work just fine. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and if you would like more liquid clay tutorials like this one, as I have got many ideas in the works at the moment. So please let me know, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.